we go. We should be ready. I'm going to move this because I just realized it's right next to the kiln. It's only a 100-degree kiln, so it's not super hot. It's not like the usual zillion-degree kiln. Okay. What you do when you're doing something like this where you have a cavity is you're going to squeeze it into the corners and around the edge first. What you do is you go around the edges first. Then I'm going to color it in. This is if I was coloring with crayons, where you kind of just stay inside the lines. Even if I was doing this on a flat surface instead of a depressed area, this is what I would do. I would color it in the same way. What I'm doing here is I'm looking to make sure that everything is covered in, and that there are no low spots. And believe it or not, this is not as easy as one might think. My lighting in here is not good enough. I have one little tiny spot that I can see where I sort of slopped over on the edge a little bit, and I'm going to clean that off. I don't want any sloppage. I'm going to check under a brighter light because I don't want to miss anything. See, it's starting to look really nice now. But I am going to check one more time, bright lights and all. As I say, I'm a little rusty with this. I don't have as good a sense as I would have. Gosh, I'm trying to think how many years it's been since I used this stuff. As I say, I don't like using it for historical pieces because it's not historically accurate. But it's cheap and easy is what it comes down to. When in comparison to doing enamel work, it's really easy. So you have to kind of look at it objectively. And there are some business owners who do this routinely for medallions and stuff like that. Personal choice. I have no problem with them doing it as long as they don't say it's real enamel. There have been some fibs in the past. I think the current person I know who's doing it tells the truth, as they say. But don't tell people it's cold enamel. There is no such thing as cold enamel. Enamel is, honest to gosh, glass that has been melted in a kiln, or it is paint. Now, if you want to tell people you're using paint, that's cool. But the fact is, most of these things are colored resins. You can do some really nice things with it. It's a very crafty thing. So, you know, if you're into crafty colors and stuff, this is a great way to get colors. And they have lots and lots of colors. So, I'm just going to keep doing this. And when I am done with this, and I have all the ones that I have ready to go here, finished up, I am going to put them all in the oven for 2 hours. Looking pretty good. Check under the light again to make sure it's looking the way it should. Again, I needed to raise the level of epoxy in the pressed area so that it creates a more opaque effect. There are no low spots. What I'm doing is I'm actually watching for how the epoxy is doming. Epoxy is kind of like water in the sense that you can see how it curves in the area that it's been placed in. I don't want it to be too low. I want it to be not bulging out the top extensively, but I want it to be looking healthy, I guess is the best way to put it, in terms of how much space it's taking. So, there we go. All the fine details are taken care of. I just realized I may be over too far here. There we go. Trying to show this and do a tidy job at the same time. Okay, let's try another one. It's a little rough on your hand. It's kind of like when you're using a cake decorating, that you're squeezing hard. I may actually choose to use a different size needle the next time around. There are other products besides Coloris that will do similar things. Some of them, the advantage to Coloris is if you're a crafter, you don't have to go out and buy 27 different new products in terms of equipment. So it doesn't require UV cure or any of that other stuff. You can use a toaster oven if you want to speed up the process, as long as your toaster oven has got an accurate temperature control. Or you could just use a room that is very temperate. I mean, some people keep a warm house. We don't. And at certain times of the year, it would be very easy for us to have a room that was 72 degrees, to be honest. It's just still early enough in the spring right now, and we've had a cold spring, that we don't have the ability to, well, we could. I mean, we could. I shouldn't say we don't have the ability. We could, if we were determined, have a room in the house be 72 degrees. I just can't imagine why I'd want to do that. I had a friend when I was young, junior high school age, whose mother had polio, and she was very temperature sensitive, and they kept that house hot. Oh, I loved my friend, but man, I hated that house. There we go. There's the preliminary put down. Now I will get it under a bright light, and I will check it again just to make sure. I'm getting a little bit better. This doesn't need much touch-up. And this is self-leveling in the sense that if I put a drop, it will just sort of splurge out and level into all the spots. Just want to be careful not to overfill. I'm going to check one spot here. I'm putting these onto the same kind of tray I would use for doing enameling, because I can easily move them into the kiln when I want to. This is called kiln furniture. Excuse me, hiccup. This is called kiln furniture, and it's a stainless steel screen. It's gone black from being in and out of the kiln a million times, but that's okay. This stuff has about an hour of working time. If it was warmer in here, it might actually be shorter working time. You have to always consider what they consider to be room temperature, and they're defining room temperature as 72 degrees. Then we never run our room temperatures at 72 degrees. That's because neither of us grew up with 72 degree houses, and we lived through a couple of energy crises where that was just not on the list of things to do. And I'm going to go check under the bright light again to make sure I haven't missed any spots or that I need to raise the level anywhere. Probably the hardest thing for people to deal with when you're doing jewelry or accessories of any kind is repetitive work. And this definitely qualifies. One-of-a-kind pieces, I don't want to say they're easy, but they are in a sense that you're not having to, you don't have to match them unless you're making earrings, in which case you can still decide to not make them symmetrical. Depends on the kind of earring you're making. A lot of modern earrings are not symmetrical, so you could choose to do that. A pendant, well, symmetrical or asymmetrical, doesn't matter. It depends on the design of the pendant. But when you have to make a dozen of something, or 2 dozen or something, or 3 or 4 dozen. That's when it gets to be a bit of a grind. And that's the reality of most businesses. I mean, very rarely do you get to be innovative in all your work. I mean, when I worked at the chai tea company managing a million years ago, the point was to produce exactly the same flavor profile so that the customers would be happy every time. I mean, sometimes people will ask us why we tend to eat at the same chain stores when we travel across the United States. The word is consistency. I know what the ingredients are that they use. They're mandated by their corporate. So the chance that they will use something, for instance, that I'm allergic to, is much lower than it is at your average restaurant. And I prefer to eat at more innovative restaurants a lot of times than your basic, big box store style restaurants. However, there are very few things that are less fun than getting sick when you are on the road and having to find bathrooms and things like that because you have an upset stomach, or I feel like I saw a Pepto-Bismol commercial yesterday, and I just sort of ran the Pepto-Bismol commercial through my head. You don't want that sort of thing when you're traveling. So for us, we are frequently eating at the same restaurants, chains, over and over as we travel across the United States, because if I order coleslaw, I know what's going to be in it, and I know what it's going to taste like. It sounds odd that coleslaw could be a controversial issue. It can be. It is made different ways in the different places in the United States, and some of them are just not acceptable to me. I don't like them. So, knowing what I'm going to get is an important concept. Okay. Looking pretty good. Going to double check under a bright light. Sometimes when I see these things done, I see them very concave because people have been cheap on the amount of resin that they put into them, and I like it to be just a little bit flatter. I like that look better. And it's a personal thing. I mean, one of the things about any kind of craft is there are standards with certain things, but then there's other things that are a matter of personal taste. So, if I say something is sterling silver, it better be sterling silver, or I can literally get fined or go to jail for misrepresenting the content of the metal. But when it comes to artistic things, it's a matter of, I made it, you chose to look at it and say, gee, I like the way that looks, and therefore you've approved it effectively. Do you like the colors I chose, or you like the way I did whatever, the enamel, the epoxy? I have been intrigued in the last few years with the number of other ways to put colors on that are high-tech. They're kind of cool. They require UV in order to cure them. And my understanding, I'm trying to think if I ever handled any. No, I've seen some. I don't remember if I've actually, gotten to touch it. But it can produce some beautiful colors and things. The sort of thing you'd see in a high-end jewelry store. But, the UV curing lights and this and that and the other thing. I did price some of that stuff just out of curiosity, and I kind of went, no. If I have to use colors like this, I will once in a while as a special order. Generally, I prefer not to. I prefer to use enamel. I've got some really cute projects underway in the enamel. I cast a cool Tudor button that is a reproduction of an actual flower-shaped Tudor button. And for those who are not up on the periods of history, Tudor is like War of the Roses sort of thing. So it's right Henry VIII into Elizabeth I time frame. They dressed to the nines, and the men were the biggest peacocks ever. So, well, not that the women weren't either. I have some really cool Tudor buttons that I make, and the originals were enameled. So I've been selling them for years, not enameled, but I have decided I will make them available enameled now. So I've got a few samples made up. In case you're wondering why I'm blowing on it, when these pieces are polished, the final drying is done using corn cob meal, which is just this dusty stuff that has a tremendous capacity for absorbing liquid, and it is literally corn cob. So once in a while, I always check them over to make sure I don't have any pieces of corn cob left in here. In this case, there were just a couple pieces like laying on the surface, and I'm like, no, you may not jump into the epoxy. That is not permissible. And set her down. Okay, those are the only ones that I have ready right now. So what I am going to do is I am going to put them into my kiln. I'm going to use the same, there's my finger, there's Rufus's butt too. I'm going to use the same technique I would use for moving enamel, which is a spatula. Spatula City. We sell spatulas, and that's all. Come on, silly thing, there we go. One of the things I don't like about paper towels is that this furniture tends to hook on them. Okay. Put that in the corner. And this here. Now what I'm going to do is I have a little bit of sticky stuff on my hands. And what I have to decide is, do I want to try and wash this stuff out or not?